International. I'm Mariam Namazi. TV International is a weekly program that focuses on issues surrounding the Middle East and political Islam, particularly Iran, from a left and progressive perspective. In this week's program, I'm joined with Faribors Puya. Hi, Faribors, welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
In this segment, I wanted to talk to you about some comments that Hazel, Blears, the Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government in the UK, has made on Islamism and how to combat extremism. And I also want to talk to you about Geert Wilders and his freedom of expression, which he's very, a lot of people have been supporting, and of course we do too. But he also wants to ban the Quran on the other hand, so we need to talk about that. But let's start with Blears' comments. I mean, she says there's a problem if you use the term Islamism or political Islam. That's a term we use very often. It's because it gets mixed in with people thinking you're actually attacking Islam. It also suggests that it's a single movement, whereas there's a distinction between, for example, Al-Qaeda and Hizb ut-Tahrir. I did realize that, but it's good that she told us that. I'd like to hear your comments on that to begin with, the fact that it's got to do with Islam and...
Yeah, this is a speech by Hazel Blears, London School of Economics. It actually sets out the British government policy towards containing the Islamists in Britain.
No, I should have said that, sorry.
And that actually she's trying, this is a formal policy, she's actually spelling out in detail the British government policy in terms of containing. She's a Minister of Community, she wants to contain community cohesion, she wants to make sure that, okay, stay calm, we're not against Islam, that's what she's saying. And also, and I think it shows the level of how careful the British government is in tackling political Islamic movement. They do not want to, they are actually trying to build a relationship with the Islamic movement. They're trying to isolate.
And they have close relations already with much of it.
Absolutely. They've actually been funding the Islamic movement in Britain under the umbrella of sort of building community cohesion. And they actually want, the only problem that the British government has is for people who actually plant bombs in Britain. That's why. As long as that's not done, anything else could be sacrificed. Right. Communities could be left to the Islamists. Women's right is something that you could negotiate. It's something that people could have a view on this. That's something you can negotiate. Naturally, to take up this policy, you've got to try to divide, try to find a good partners, band partners, the terrorists or non-terrorists, try to divide Al-Qaeda and Muslim Brotherhood, leader of Al-Qaeda is different from Al-Qaradawi.
It just seems like a futile exercise because...
Well, I mean, we know, from our experience of dealing with the Islamic movement, this is a mistaken policy. I think if British government and Hazel Blears thinks they're going to succeed by taming the political Islamic movement and bring them into the fold, so to speak, and somehow feed them, they're actually feeding a beast. The Islamic movement policy is actually to strengthen its hand, in a very sort of mostly quietly, mostly try to build the infrastructure of the Islamic movement in Britain. Sharia courts is something that the government actually endorsed. In Britain, you could start actually funding various Islamist groups. They've been doing it for many years, and they think they can feed the beast. I think that's a dangerous policy that British government
What's interesting here is the distinction they make between the terrorism branch and the Islamist branch.
And non-Trump, yeah.
And it's interesting. Well, so basically Sharia courts and stoning of women, that's not considered terrorism. Those are just that's part of Sharia law, for example.
I don't think Hazel Blears actually condones Islamism, but I think what they do, they think they can actually, is a give and take situation. It's something that they can negotiate, but I think actually there's certain standards that are non-negotiable.
But also, I mean, the issue, what I find interesting is they talk about engagement with all groups other than those who are not terrorists, which includes some really vile groups to begin with. But also, I mean, they've poured in £45 million. They want to pour into training, language training for imams, and just ridiculous things that obviously are just going to strengthen the political Islamic movement. This whole thing about wanting to change minds, where what they don't seem to understand is this is a political movement and it needs to be dealt with politically. And I think, in a sense, it sort of alleviates by doing this, they sort of take away attention from the fact that they actually are so integral in supporting and strengthening the political Islamic movement, whether it's in Iraq and Afghanistan or whether it's here in Britain as well. And the relations they have with, for example, the Islamic regime in Iran, with the Saudi government, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most of these governments in Middle East have very close relations with the British government. But in Britain, that's where we are sort of talking about now, is that this is a dangerous policy. That's is a health warning with what Hazel Blears actually said.
What should they do instead?
I think they should, as you said, it's a political movement. You need to confront, stand up for women's rights, Hazel Blears. Stand up for freedom of expression, Hazel, British government. That's the only way you can actually. If you stand up for, for women's rights, stop the Sharia courts in Britain. Stop
relations with the Islamic regime in Iran,
absolutely, and also stop funding the Islamists.
But anyway,
stop the religious schools that actually strengthen all of these. That's and stand up for your principles. And what they're doing, actually selling out thousands upon thousands, millions of people, as Islamic people, actually selling them to imams who have very close link with Islamic groups, and Islamic groups have very close link with the terrorist groups.
Well, actually, I mean, I think, the British government will never stand up because, in a sense, I think
Sure.
they're in bed, really, with the Islamists in many instances, and it's our job to do that, and that's why it's important for people to support our movement. Yeah. But let's move on to Geert Wilders, because I don't think we have too much time. He's recently banned from showing his film Fitna in Parliament. I think we only have about 2 minutes. Yeah. Just to get your take on things, obviously, you don't think his film should be banned, even though you don't agree with him.
Absolutely, I think absolute unconditional freedom of expression. He has to be, he has to be allowed to show his film. I'm going to stand up next to him and expose him for his anti-immigration policy, for his, for his vile movement that he represents. But that doesn't. I think we need to defend freedom of expression because we know that the Islamists are trying to actually stifle freedom of expression and limit it.
Thank you. Well, someone's written to us criticizing us for Reza Moradi's film Fitna Remade, which is a criticism of Geert Wilders' film, and saying that we've censored Geert Wilders. We haven't. He has a right to his opinion, and so do we. And it's a battleground of ideas and movements, and we represent that left and that progressive movement that will stand up to the right wing, like Geert Wilders, the anti-immigration movement, and stand up for equality and freedom and secularism and rights for people everywhere, whether it's in Iran and Afghanistan or right here in Britain and Europe. That's the end of our program. If you have any comments or questions, do send it to us, and we'll address them in future programs. We hope you enjoyed this week's program. Until next week, we'll see you then. Bye.